Hello, everyone. I'll just get started. My name is LaJuné McMillian, and I'm a new media artist and creative technologist. So these are some of my earlier works from when I was in college. Basically, the story is that I went to NYU Tandon School of Engineering, and in the first semester, I originally thought I was going to do mechanical engineering, but then I was like, no, this is terrible. I'm having a bad time. Basically, we had this class where we got to learn more about the different majors, and digital media was one of them. And I was just really shocked that you could make art with technology. And so I switched my major, and yeah, I just started making art, which definitely wasn't in my plans, but it was super exciting. I really loved that I could explore and learn new tools and create all different types of projects. I learned everything from like video stuff to was introduced to motion capture, Unreal Engine, and physical computing. And so yeah, basically I was just making a bunch of stuff. And then as the story goes, financial aid got me and was like, can't take your last class unless you pay us $20,000. And I was like, oh no, I don't got that. So then I had to leave. And, but it ended up being a blessing in disguise because I ended up just doing what I was passionate about, which is art. I feel like I would have gotten a jobby job, but didn't do that, so it's great. Anyway, so I ended up taking a detour. That's when I began coaching figure skating again, because I grew up figure skating. And yeah, we worked on this end of the year ice show called Black Ice. And essentially it was like all of these different genres of black dance, but on ice and black music. And I realized in that moment, I didn't show this slide, but yeah. But basically, like, we had this like Afrofuturism piece where all of the high school students got to basically like code their props. So we were all like soldering and coding, which was really fun. But it was in this moment when I realized like, oh, this is actually what I want to do. Like, I don't necessarily like want to be the director of this program, but I want to go back to what I'm really passionate about, which is technology, and I want to integrate these tools into performance art. And so basically, towards the end of my time working there, this really cool residency came out from Eyebeam, which is this Arts and Technology Center based in New York City. It came out with this really cool year-long residency program called Access, and I was like, oh my gosh, all of my access that I had lost from like leaving school, I need that. I need my access back. So like maybe I can think about what it means to have access, not only for me, but on a larger scale for various different, communities that may have never had access to a $30,000 motion capture studio or suits or, expensive computers. What would it mean to sort of dive deep into that research and into that process of regaining my access to these tools and my pathway back to this space, and then opening the doors for more folks. And so this is from the first paragraph of that residency grant that I wrote, and I'll just read it out. But in the past few years, access to motion capture data, 3D character-based models, and software to make animation yourself has skyrocketed. From MakeHuman to Mixamo to Carnegie Mellon's motion capture database, the ability to make and finish polished projects has become easier for many. And while these resources are extremely helpful to create a range of projects, they lack tools to create diverse characters and movements unexplored by systems that center assumptions of neutrality. And so essentially what I was saying here was that basically there are a lot of free softwares and programs that are available to us. We'll actually in the workshop tomorrow, we'll be looking at some of them, like what are these free tools that are online that we can use to get into motion capture and to get into like creating avatars. But I think the one thing that's missing is that because these tools are free, because they're easy to use, there are so many other like opportunities for things to be made in uncaring ways. And so the differences in different body types, or the differences in races, or the differences in how people categorize movements and hold people's data can be very, very harmful. So yeah, so basically, at first, when I first started this project, I thought, oh, I'll just make a database of motion capture data and Black character-based models, and then also motion capture data from Black folks. And I could, you know, basically go through various different cultures, like Black culture. I could just like create a database, and it's going to be great. But then I was like, and that was enough, I think, like to get the residency. But as soon as I got it, there were these lawsuits that were filed against Fortnite, which is actually really wild because so I use Unreal Engine to create a lot of my visual work, but Unreal Engine in Epic Games actually also makes Fortnite, which is a video game. And so essentially there were these lawsuits that were filed against them for using dances from Black creators without permission, compensation, or credit. And so the Millie Rock became the Swipe It and the Carlton became the Fresh, effectively erasing the origins of these dances. And currently the lawsuits are on pause because those dances aren't considered choreography under copyright law. But I won't get into like whether or not I agree that that should have even been like an option, considering the fact that, you know, even though these dances, you know, they do come from specific places, you know, like how do whole communities get compensation for the movements that they create rather than just one individual. Either way, so there were all of these lawsuits that came out, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't actually want to build this database. How I'm thinking about this right now actually perpetuates systems of harm, and it also like opens the door for extractive, for extraction, for exploitation. It opens the door for us to just keep getting sold over and over again, which is not something that I want to participate in as an artist. Even though I know that like there are some folks who have like tried to build sort of things like this, I always just feel like it's just not something that would agree with my values, and so yeah. So basically, I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that. But in another example, this is actually like this GIF behind here is from Mixamo. And Mixamo is made by Adobe, and essentially it's an online motion capture database, and it's really cool actually. Like I think we'll definitely use this tool tomorrow, but it's really great for rigging characters, which essentially adds a skeleton to an avatar so that you can move it. And then there's also a library of movements that are available. However, when you're looking for culturally specific movements, you may find some, but are often met with dances and movements that don't reflect the search terms. Also, in the name of making it easy to use, these tools often omit valuable information from users, including information about the motion capture actor who provided the movements, as well as important historical and cultural information about the movements performed. And so, essentially, in a lot of like motion capture databases, you will see the movement, and maybe you won't even see the actual movement like here. Like you'll just get like a list of like, oh, subject one. So basically, it also breaks down people in their names, in their humanness, and just calls them a subject. So it's like subject one doing a walk cycle, subject two doing a plie. And so I just found that a very dehumanizing practice to call people subjects rather than their names. And then also to like at least give me some sort of description of like who they are, where they're from, what they're about. Like I want to know all this information, especially if I'm using these movements for my projects. Because all of these things matter, you know? Like these are essentially, like if you're using these movements for your projects, they are collaborators. These folks are collaborators to your process, and they should be credited as so. So, yeah. But then also like this movement back here is like one of the many hip hop dances, and it's like this weird shimmy thing. So like that's not hip hop dancing, which is weird. So yeah, so yeah, it's just like a lack of care. But also because it's like a free product, like they're just like, hey, we're giving you something. leave us alone, which is also, I guess, kind of fair. I don't know. But yeah, this is from FaceGen, which is a plugin for DAZ 3D. And essentially, this is what I use even currently now to create a lot of my different avatars. And so what's really cool about FaceGen is that you can take a front-facing and side profile picture of folks, of yourself or folks that you're working with, and you can upload them, and then it has this algorithm that can like recompile your face really well. And that's great. But then once you get onto the slider section, that's when things start to get extremely problematic. And so you see at the bottom here, they have sliders for African, East Asian, South Asian, and European. And so like that is extremely like terrible because you get to now see like what the developers who created the software, like what they feel looking more African or looking more East Asian or South Asian or European is, rather than what is the reality, which is like you can look various different types of ways from various different regions. And then you also see in here too like how they feel about race and skin tone in relationship to gender. And so what's really interesting is that whenever the avatar becomes lighter in skin tone, they become more female, and whenever they become darker in skin tone, they become more male, which is like something that's very reflected like in our society today. So it's always really interesting when you're working with softwares that deal with the body and deal with movements, because it's this real like physical representation of how our bodies are seen in our everyday lives. And so I think that that's one of the things that I'm really interested in like diving into when I work with a lot of these tools that I'm working with. And then back to Epic Games, they came out with a tool called MetaHumans. And I actually made a MetaHuman, which looks really amazing. It looks just like me. Like I love the tool, but the way that they rolled out this product was very problematic to me. Essentially, like they came out with they rolled out the product by giving us a project file, and essentially the only two avatars that we were able to work with were this black woman and there was an Asian man. And so essentially this was the way that they were saying, oh, you know, representation, you know, we got black people, we got everybody, we did a great job, you know? So, but I go on my Twitter and then I see a bunch of I see so many white men driving the face of this black woman, and it just felt so eerie, so nasty. I was like, this is the future? Like our skin being used as just like a sack, kind of, really. And I was just like, this is so dehumanizing, and I feel just so disgusted looking at this. And so yeah, I mean, I think that the common threads of these examples that I just gave is this oversimplification of black people, our stories and our lives, and it exists in a network of systems that commodify, quantify, and degrade our humanity in order to capitalize off of our existence and being. And so how do we combat that commodification, exploitation, erasure, and dilution of black culture and black people? What do cultural reparations and accountability look like? And then how can we discover, learn, invest in, and steward systems that prioritize liberation and abundance? And so, yeah, I mean, as I continue, I mean, the list goes on and on. Like I have a lot more examples, like in a longer talk, or even in like a class, like there's a class version of this. But I guess I just have more questions, and I haven't answered any of these. Like, I don't have any like legit, like, hey, these are the answers to how we do all of these things. But I think this was the moment when I started to have more questions than I had answers for. And so I was like, oh, maybe I can expand this project into a library, a space where I could research, a space where I could work with people, work with community, grow community, and we could explore these questions together. And so, yeah, the Black Movement Library grew into a library for activists, performers, and artists to create diverse extended reality projects, a space to research how and why we move, as well as became an archive of Black existence. And so, yeah, I began to push the community aspect of the library first through performances, extended reality experiences, workshops, conversations, and tool making. So yeah, so I've been basically just like hosting all of these different events like as I can. And the first project that I wanted to talk about was movement portraits. And essentially, movement portraits serve as a way to learn about the lives of the performers, contributing their movement to the Black Movement Library. And it asks this question of what happens when we ritualize the archival process of data collection and invite the community in as a witness. So essentially, like, over the course of development, I basically do interviews with each person, and we record them. And actually now it's more it's a lot more like documentary. There's a lot of like more like traditional documentary practices like built into it. And so essentially we do these interviews, and essentially all of the questions have to do with movement histories and movement journeys. And then those interviews are then used to create these abstracted soundscapes that they perform to. And then essentially, like, you know, in the performance itself, it's just me asking the folks that I'm working with to just move as they would move. And what's so interesting about this process, rather than like a traditional motion capture process, is that in traditional motion capture, when you go into a studio, you're normally hit with a list of things you're not supposed to do. It's like, oh, you're not supposed to like roll over the floor. Like you're not supposed, like you need the markers to be seen by the cameras. Like you need, like this is the way that you're supposed to interact with this tool. But for me, I'm really interested in how the person moves. So I'm just like, even though we're using, do I have? A suit. This is like an old picture of like what an old sensor would look like. But even though we're using sensors like these, which really don't want you to like spin, they don't want you to spin, they don't want you to do any jumps, they don't want you to do any of this. I'm just like, no, I actually want you to do all of that. And if the tool can't capture you, then it just doesn't capture you, which is something that as an artist I work a lot more with. I love that abstraction, that idea that blackness can't be captured, and that it shouldn't be, is something that really excites me. So this is a sensor. It has a 3-axis accelerometer, gyroscope, and magnetometer, and essentially the suit used to look like this. These are the first artists that I worked with, both Nala and Ronaldo. And I actually got to do 2 portraits of them. So I did 2 initial portraits in 2019. And then we got to work together again on a different movement portrait, which I wanted to share with you all. And so essentially, this was also, so let me tell you the story real quick of like how this all happened. So basically, I did the first movement portrait performance as part of a residency that I also had with a creative agency, actually. And they were like, oh, you should do this performance in our office space. And I was like, okay. So we did the performance in their office space, and it went really well. And then the pandemic happened, and then I got connected to Blade of Grass, and then they were like, oh, you should do this on the Brooklyn Public Library. Like, it'd be cool to like layer the libraries. And I was just like, okay, like, let's see what happens. And then it happened, and I was like, okay. So then I had to move back to New York because I was living in Maryland, and I don't know, it just all worked out. But the first half of it was actually all student work, so actually very similar to like what we're doing together tomorrow. I hosted like a 6-week workshop with folks, and it was open to the public, and basically everybody created like, you know, 30-second movement portrait clips of themselves, and then it sort of moved into the live performances, which I will speed up to. Cool.
It's another way I can interact with music, and it's another way I can interact with people. Another way I can interact with myself.
So you can see her avatar in the background projected.
And I think that I also had this wake-up call where I realized dance is not only about me, like it's literally driven by community. And so throughout the pandemic, I started linking people and projects started happening. I think that we all liberate one another. And I think that, yeah, it also starts internally. Like liberating yourself, knowing your worth. You know, and that's not right.
I will pause it here though, but yeah, I'll pause it there because I have a lot more videos to show. But yeah, it was really cool. The next year, I got to translate it into a Times Square midnight moment, which literally premiered like the following year. So the first performance was June of 2021, and then the Times Square midnight moment was June 2022. And then I also premiered it as a virtual reality experience at Tribeca Film Festival, and then also as its own installation in another show too. So this is from the midnight moment. And then, oops, yeah. Cool. So yeah, so then that brings me to Afropresentism, which is an ideology and emerging concept borrowed from Nema Gatir, an artist and guerrilla theorist whose work explores love and indigeneity in a time of algorithm debris. She coins the term as a digital genre fusing archival, fine art, documentary practices on and through new media in the expression of an Afrofuturist lived reality. Afropresentism is you channeling your ancestry through every technology at your disposal. Meditation, conversation, love, the web, and turning absolutely everything into a portal that takes you precisely where you need to be in this moment towards the next, until finally the space between dream and memory collapses into your reality now. When I found out about Nema and like Afropresentism, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like that's exactly what I'm doing. Like this is actually like, wow. It's so great when you get to like see words and see folks who can write about work that you're interested in making. It's just such a clear and beautiful way. So, yeah. That brings me to the next project, though, which is Antidote, which is an offering and a prayer. It's an interruption, a hacking, a portal, a medicine, a ritual response and physical undoing of the lie that we are not our own and that we are not free. And so, actually, at the same time when I was working on movement portraits, I was also working on this project with a choreographer, Marguerite Hemmings, during the pandemic. And essentially, we were commissioned by Abrams Art Center in New York City, initially to work with high school students to create a live motion capture performance with them. However, as things happened, you know, we had to basically transfer everything to online, and so that commission turned into more of a research-based commission, and so they told us, hey, like, you know, just work on something and, you know, show it at the end, and this project was birthed out of that. And so essentially, Marguerite and I would do these super long Zoom calls, and for me, it was like opening this portal and using Zoom as this conduit to basically like connect in a way that I had never done before. And so essentially, like through conversation and through movement, actually, like Marguerite was sent a motion capture suit, and then I had a motion capture suit. We began to do a lot of these movements, a lot of different witnessing movements, and record them, and then translate that into the antidote experience. And so essentially it's like this 20-minute animation, and it takes you through all of these different movement and written prayers that we wrote together and moved through together. And it allows like folks who watch it to also partake in that journey with us. And yeah, as we were building this workout, though, we got connected to Salome Asega, who's another really amazing artist and who also runs New Ink and is just all around amazing. And she was just like, hey, this is great, but you know, you're showing this as a video on the internet, and like this is a very like you are showing this very like vulnerable piece of work. You're putting your bodies online, and then also you need to consider the lands that you are on that makes this process for you to be able to open that portal possible. And so I think that you should like have a digital land acknowledgement for the work. And so she wanted to write part of it, but she didn't feel comfortable. She didn't feel comfortable writing the full entirety of it. And so I found Amber Starks, who's this amazing Afro-Indigenous activist. Like I found her on Twitter, and I was just like, ah! So I DM'd her, and I was just like, hey, like, can you like co-write this? You're really amazing. I just like sort of binged watched like a bunch of her talks, and yeah, and then she agreed to it, and so they co-wrote this beautiful land acknowledgement, and then we also worked with Rina Nakwe for the sound score, who I also work with for a lot of other projects too. So yeah, I wanted to share with you, though, the land acknowledgement that they co-wrote, though.
Antidote is our inheritance. It is a place of refuge in a very anti-Black world. It is a place that will forever transcend space and time, white supremacy, settler colonialism, and racial capitalism. It is a place of freedom, a maroon space, the great dismal swamp, free towns, the place where our ancestors found liberation in one another, indigenous peoples of this land, and the natural world. Antidote advises us, oppressed and marginalized peoples, to continue to invest in our own liberation. It is a reminder that our ancestors held firm to this fundamental idea that we deserve to exist outside of oppression. And it is because our ancestors truly believed in and rooted themselves in this notion that we are still here today. So as we move through this infinite space today and every day, let us first remember the ones who came before us. We must acknowledge that antidote would not be fully realized without indigenous peoples of Turtle Island and without stolen indigenous peoples of Africa. To the indigenous peoples of these lands, you are the true stewards and rightful heirs of these territories. We call out your names to acknowledge your sovereignty and bestow respect on your ancestors and your descendants. The Lenape, the Kalapuya, the Kalowitz, the Klatskanai, the Atfalati, the Nachkochtank, the Piscataway, the Munsee, and the Carnisi. To you, we say, we see you. You are not forgotten. You are still here. We remember that your peoples, along with other indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, endured under contact, European imperialism, attempted genocide, smallpox blankets, land theft, forced removal, broken treaties, warfare, desecrated sacred sites, boarding schools, stolen generations, forced assimilation, allotment, blood quantum, reservations, urbanization, cultural suppression, severed relationships to the natural world, and denial of your sovereignty and right to self-governance. We have an understanding that our feet could not have landed on solid ground without your sacrifice and without your grave loss. Your name shall always be on the tips of our tongues and rooted in the sacred spaces of our hearts. And to Black, indigenous peoples of Africa, and all of their descendants, antidote would not prevail without you, the stolen ones, the ones who endured the slave castles on the shores of West Africa, the Middle Passage, the auction blocks, enslavement, commodification, dehumanization, Jim Crow, segregation, state-sponsored terrorism, Black codes, sundown laws, the one-drop rule, redlining, ghettos, the war on drugs, the prison industrial complex, and global anti-Blackness. We say your names without knowing them. We think thoughts of you without ever seeing you. We honor your humanity, and we hold accountable these systems that have sought to commodify and destroy you. Those of us who are your legacy live as a testament to your endurance and your will to survive the horrors we can only imagine. We remember your determination, and we celebrate your tenacity. You are also rooted in the sacred spaces in our hearts and will not be forgotten.
Antidote is online and away from keyboard, a place that cultivates networks of care to conceal and protect each other from that tries to eat us, devour us, make us consumable bits of information to trade. A place where ones and zeros make a loose bedrock, and what really holds the foundation for our gathering in this virtual place is our innate illegible technologies. Here, technology is not just an extension of the body, but also an assemblage of tools that have been passed down and inherited for us to mesh and knit our survival, pleasure, and growth. Antidote is where we champion our Black collectivity and unbox the Black box. It is a place for healing. The internet is full of sharp edges. There are plenty of places to get cut and nicked. Look at your scrolling fingertips. Do you see notches? I have cuts from seeing Black gloss go viral on platforms that thrive on the spectacle of us. Antidote is cultivating a new place for Black creativity, how we move, how we be, our cool, that thing, our history, our future, the story of us. Our resilience has always been our way forward and our way back. Antidote calls for abolition. We are in a nook of the virtual that springs from a knowing that we can no longer be an afterthought or special consideration to an existing information infrastructure that didn't consider us from the outset, or pretends not to see us but collects us as dark data. Antidote is tired of digital inclusion as amendment. The problems of technology cannot be solved with more technology. Antidote is restorative. Before Silicon Valley's advance to invent our future for us, before the 18th century Spanish missions in the region, the Ohlone were stewards of an abundant Northern California rich in animal and plant life. 500 years after the Ohlone were alpha caretakers, big tech occupies the land and prioritizes profit to the point of overturning a site from resource-rich to resource-intensive. And like a germ, the depletion spreads because we've built global dependence on this US construction. Finding our way back to abundance is urgent. Repatriation and the redistribution of money and resources are urgent. Decolonization is not a metaphor, but the antidote. Antidote is consentful. There are no terms and conditions here because service is not monopolized, but upon each of us. Power and responsibility are distributed. Remember, we have the tools in us to architect better ways to hold each other.
Yeah, and then I'll pause there. But then it does go through like us moving through those worlds together. Okay. So yeah, so basically, we did Antidote first as a video work, but then we did actually the following year get to perform it live with high school students, and so they were able to take the prayers that we created, and then also the land acknowledgement, and then they performed to it. So yeah, so alongside with that, I do teach another workshop called Understanding, Transforming, and Preserving Movement in Digital Spaces, which is a workshop to learn about extended reality tools and relationships to race, gender, and culture. And so I've been able to basically travel that workshop to various different organizations and institutions. And yeah, and then I also host a lot of different conversations and panel discussions, which bring Black folks from different fields and from different perspectives to dive into these questions with community. So yeah, one thing that I found is that, like, for me, being part of so many different, like, Black communities, like, you know, Black performance communities, Black art communities, Black anthropology communities, so many various different worlds, I just want to figure out how we can all just, like, be in one space and see, like, where those, and see, like, where we can bridge those connections together through conversation. Because Black movement in digital spaces affects all of us. So yeah, like, how do we sort of understand and map that out? And then, yeah, in October of 2022, I got to do a Black movement pop-up library at Recess Art Gallery. And so essentially, it was the first time I ever got to put all of the different aspects of the library space into one space as its own show. And so there was a collection of books. And then there was also, I should have put pictures in here of it, but it's okay. There's also space to look at the current movement portraits, but then there are also computers where people could just, like, you know, go on the web. And then basically it also had those workshop elements that were also embedded, as well as panel discussions. So yeah. Yeah, what time is it? Okay, I'm gonna sort of I'll talk a bit about this. So basically another project that I've been working on is actually about Black figure skaters. So I grew up figure skating, but also my great-great-uncle, Slick, Joseph Vanterpool, taught himself how to figure skate out of various different rinks in New York City. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, I need to make an ice show about this. And so basically, I've been working on a show called The Unseen, which is a real-time motion capture performance on ice, showcasing, celebrating, and honoring Black figure skaters of the past and present. And so yeah, so that's my uncle. And yeah, I've been really interested in how I can sort of unearth a lot of these different histories that are unknown, and yeah, yeah, that's also him. So I'll show a little bit of that. Then I'll go into.
Well, when I get back.
This is my cousin. He's a son.
Teach myself how to skate because I'm so intrigued by what I see, and I think I can do this. Back in this time, back in the 40s, roughly after the war, you have to remember that that things were very segregated still at that time. So, and then obviously him being an African American, it wasn't access to coaching that you would normally have, you know, in that time. So. Him, like, and skaters of his ilk of that time period, saw the need to, at least if they were going to be, if they were going to pursue this, they would have to train themselves how to skate. There were no touring groups that had any Black skaters on those touring groups. So the brain trust of those who developed or established the Harlem on Ice was they were spurred to do that simply because there were no groups or no venues that were allowing us to skate, at least to that level, and get paid for it. So it was really a somewhat of a family saying, so for Harlem and Ice, it was a blessing in disguise. Although it didn't probably reach the potential that it could have reached in lieu of the segregation, it still provided a platform for my dad and so many others that were involved in the group to get their names out there and have the exposure at other venues supplemental to Rock Folk Center.
And then that's my friend TJ, who performed in the piece. So I'll pause it there. But yeah, that was from the first iteration that I got to do. Also in 2022, I was doing the most. But yeah, but basically I hope to, right now I'm working to do a lot more field work and meet a lot more families and do a lot more interviews so that I can do it on a larger scale. But yeah, that brings me to this final project, The Portal's Keeper, which is why I'm here. And essentially, actually during the time I was working on Antidote with Marguerite, it actually inspired me to begin to do a lot of like inner, like just like journaling and inner work. And so in the initial version of this, it's actually called Spirit to Child, which is part of The Portal's Keeper. You know, I don't know, like one day it sort of just came to me, oh my gosh, like, you know, I've been opening these portals like all over, like what does it mean to be a keeper of portals? Like what does that job entail? And I guess it just got me thinking about like, oh, like I've been doing a lot of this work of like, you know, talking to my inner child, talking to spirit. What if they could be in conversation? Because they are in conversation. And so essentially, like the prayers as they are now are, it's essentially like prayers from child, from my inner child, prayers from spirit, prayers from me as I am now. And yeah, this is actually one of the prayers that I'll just read now. But yeah, okay. Take a deep breath and step with me into the unknown. From this moment into the next, moment of peace, moment of nourishment, moment of overwhelming love, care, and joy. What is necessary of us to release to make room of this moment? What is necessary for us to hold on to this moment? To carry this gift into our next lifetime, to our predecessors, to honor our ancestors who gave us this gift of resilience, and what is necessary of us to hold ourselves accountable to this gift? What must be broken to reveal what is sacred? What must be destroyed to reveal what is real? May we protect what is sacred to us, and may we honor ourselves and others. Self-determination and self-actualization are not only hopeful destinations, but are embedded in our ways of existence. And so take a step with me and commit to the unknown, the unseen, and let us take a moment to leave behind anything that does not serve this purpose. For in morning time, we will rise up again. So let us be grateful for our breath, for our bodies, for each other. For we are the portal's keepers. We must protect our dreams, for they are real. They are enough. They are enough. May we release our fear and step into courage. May we release our uncertainty and step into confidence. We are enough. We are whole. We are worthy. And so yeah, so actually these next two slides are just streams of consciousness. So like, don't mind the like really bad grammar and stuff. But basically, I've been thinking about freedom and liberation, and we cannot show up to liberation when we're unable to fully show up for ourselves. And I think part of being fully there for yourself means looking yourself fully in the mirror and looking at all of your wounds and looking at all of your trauma and looking at the things that are not necessarily like the things that you want to uplift or see. And so, yeah, I feel like for me right now, like I'm in a place where I can no longer afford to just gloss over those things. So how do I sort of bring all of that up to the forefront and, you know, make art about it? So yeah, so basically, this is also more streams of consciousness, but I'll read this. To look our wounds in the face as they pop up in our bodies when we are triggered. When it makes the hairs on our backs rise up and ask us, are you ready to truly heal me yet? Or will you allow me to lay dormant again? To truly end the cycle of harmful trauma, we must be able to dive deep into it and trust that our guides are there waiting for us on the other side. Basically, this all came up because I was really interested in creating sculptures. So I'm making sculptures now made of like synthetic hair. And so one of the types of synthetic hair is called yaki hair. And actually what's really interesting about that is that yaki hair extensions actually used to be made from yak animals. And so I was like, oh my gosh, it's really wild. And so in Buddhism, apparently the yak's story is that it was transformed into the stars, the moon, the sky. And so here I'm just saying the yak turning into the stars had to be a painful experience because all transformation is. I know this as a skater, as an artist, and as a lifelong learner. When we first engage in any new thing, we are bound to fail, and we should welcome that failure like an old friend that sits down with us and asks us, how are you, in a way that is truly and patiently waiting to listen to you bare your soul. That's what true humility is. It's not a lack of confidence to admit to suck at something at first. Confidence is when you work through the initial hump and commit to yourself and say, I will never give up on me. When we take off the training wheels, we are all bound to fall and scrape our knees, but our guides are there waiting patiently like the proud parents some of us may have never had. But even when those parents may not have materialized how society says they must, know you are loved. The portal's keeper asks us to consider this journey, to consider our pain and the vices we struggle with, to conceal them. It asks us to allow these wounds to show themselves, to confront them, and only then ponder what is a Black liberated reality. And so yeah, basically in this first iteration, I've been creating avatars for each version of me. So this is a version of me now. And then I also have me as a child, then I have me as spirit. And yeah, and then the idea, so this is actually from Spirit to Child, which I'll play part of, and it's one of the prayers where Spirit speaks to Child. I think it's like, in your bones, as oh, and that's me dancing.
I remember the first time I saw you come here. You were so young, scared, and abandoned. Raised in the trenches of anti-Blackness, taught to compromise yourself from birth as a way to preserve your life, absorbing it in your bones, and reeking of inferiority. Each time you come back here, I see your spirit dim, your increasing exhaustion overcoming you. You have been forced to work so hard, robbed of your youth when you should be playing and living carefree. As you call for mercy, I hold you. You may not know now that I am always here holding you. Even when you do not feel me, guiding you to release that pain, to share in that healing. Your life's journey is to find your way back home, to be with me always, too deep in my love. This is a letter to the children who woke up so far away from home, they lost sense of self, and made room for the ills of a network of abusive systems to overcome their body, with such deep sadness they almost give up. You have always been on the search for home. You are home. Home lives inside you, breathes inside you, is around you always. In your smile, through the vibrations of your laughter, may you reestablish your connection to home, your lineage, your magic. You did all this work begging to be seen, but at what cost? You had to abandon the core of who you are to try and fit into a crevice of space that would never welcome you, unless it could strip away your humanity and divinity in order to capitalize and consume your body. Come, child, you can rest here now. Here you are free. You are seen. I see you. You can be. A letter to the Black children trying to find their way home.
Yeah, so, oops. So basically, this is on the Denver Clock Tower. I've been really interested in what it means to open all of these, like, portals, like, all over, everywhere. So this one's at the Denver Clock Tower. Oh, it's also a performance, so basically I actually read them, and it is a, I won't like play through this, I'll just talk over it, but essentially it is a water ritual. So I wrote all the prayers on dissolvable paper, and then I give that paper also out to the audience, and then I essentially like prompt them to write their prayers down before the performance. And so essentially, as the performance goes, I pass out the water bowl, and then we all send our prayers to Spirit. And yeah, I'll be doing another version of this next week. And it actually does look like, I do like some face capture, but the face capture doesn't work too well right now. But yeah, I basically play each character in real time and read the prayers. Yeah, and then I'm also like opening another portal at Fulton Street Station. So this is just from like a work in progress that I got to do. And this is just like part of like, this is just like one of the screens, but it's actually a 50-channel video installation. So it's gonna be like all throughout the train station there. And so it starts like with like, going into the portal, and then you see me. And yeah, and then in the next version, I'll actually be moving in it. So, yeah. And then, what else? Oops. Yeah, I'll just end with this. But movement does not only represent our individual experiences, but it also represents our collective memory, transcending space, time, and oppressive social structures. It allows us to connect to each other, our ancestors, our deepest selves, and gives us space to communicate to our future. Movement is a technology, holding the stories of our existence globally. And then I'll just end there. Cool. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's been stressful. Like, especially in that stretch from 2021 to 2022, it was just like boom, 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 boom. And it was like, I'm not gonna lie, like I got burnt out by the end. And so like I did, for the most part, like I did things here and there in 2023, but it wasn't like, I didn't do that much at all. Like I took a break for the most part and I was just like teaching. But now I think what I learned was that I want to be more intentional, and I want to be a little bit slower, like with the projects that I'm doing. Like with the sort of first iterations of a lot of these projects, I am really happy like with like how they came out, but I think like how I want to move forward is I want them to be even like more involved. So I think like, for instance, like with the ice show, like I want to build an ice rink, like a large ice rink, and I want everything to be very specific. Like I want the snack bar to have specific snacks. I want the skates to, you know, light up. I want there to be projections on the ice, but then also like I want a half dome. So it's just like I want things to be very like more expansive than I've been able to do like with the resources that I have right now. So I think like right now I'm in the process of like trying to think about how to expand the projects like specifically, and how to take time to just work on one thing rather than many things at one time. And I think like right now, like with the Portal's Keeper, like how I've been working and how I also like to work in general is like I do work in iterations. So I'm always trying to build on an idea as I go. And so essentially like I'm opening portals like all over, but then I also have a version of it that will be my first solo museum show in September. So basically I'm like, okay, now I need to place all of these like prayers into like an installation to be shown, like a longer, more like more in-depth sort of version. But then even that, I'm just like, oh, like that's like even the first iteration of that, I'm like, I want to sort of just like keep building and keep building. So it's been like, but it has been like a mixture of that, trying not to stress myself out, but then also realizing that I just like to do the most. Like there's this like, there's this meme, and it was just like, oh gosh, like, I don't know, it's like accidentally like does the most. Anyway, I'm always doing the most. So I don't know, I'm trying to calm down and just like do the most, like, and try to put my energy into one thing at a time. But I'm also going with the flow too. So like as the opportunities come, but I think now I'm even getting more intentional with the opportunities that I take and the opportunities that I don't take. So it's been a lot of like, oh, like actually everything is not a yes, where it like previously was, which makes sense, you know. But now everything's like, I don't know, like actually, like, I don't know if I should be doing this here. Actually, like maybe this is not the way that I should be working on these particular projects that address topics that like are maybe not in alignment with the values. So I don't know. It's been a lot of like trial and error though. Yeah, so I think how I view myself in that collaboration dynamic is more of a witness. And so essentially, like, when I'm learning about them and I'm learning about their journeys, like I am the person who makes I make the unreal worlds, and then I also, but I am making them like based off of like the conversations that I have and what I am witnessing from their movement. And so, and then also that's how the sound is made too. So I don't make the sound normally. Either Nala or even Rena will make the soundscapes. But essentially what we're doing is like we're listening to the interviews like over and over and over again. And then we're generating visuals from just listening. So, so yeah, so I think, but when there's like a performance, it is very similar actually. Like I'm learning about them, learning about their process, learning about their journey. And then I'm also learning about like what are their favorite colors, and like actually like even just from their favorite colors, like I will literally base the world off of that. So I integrate all of those things into the worlds that are made, and yeah, I think when it comes to their movements, I tell them to move however they want to move. Like I don't place any parameters or say like you have to do this way or that way, and I just like work with what I have. So sometimes the movements, and actually like one of the really interesting things too, even in the virtual reality experience, when I showed it, like so many people are, I feel like especially with showing like an animated work like this, like people, they want to see things be precise and perfect. Like they want to see like, they don't want to see like things broken, or like they don't want to see like bones flying everywhere. Like they want to see it like one-to-one the whole time. But it's like an explanation of like me explaining, being like, hey, like, no, like this is just not how the technology works right now. And also like that wasn't my intention going in. Like I don't put the digital technology first. I am really interested in centering and uplifting like embodied and ancestral technologies, and then having those digital technologies be the sort of visual output to say, to basically say like, oh, this is what happened actually, rather than me going, because if I were to work on a another like motion capture piece where it's like I let's say I have a freelance job, then I would have to go in and actually clean the data and like put it into Motion Builder and then like change and like correct all of those issues that happened in the take. But I don't do that with these portraits though.
So in this process, from beginning to end, and I guess there was a lot more there that we didn't get to, what would you say your biggest learning was, and how would you integrate that into, if you were speaking to yourself at the beginning of this process, how would you speak to yourself about integrating that learning into its...
Yeah, I think I would... I mean, I'm very much just like a learn as you go type of person. But if I could go back and talk to myself before, I think I would say like, hey, like you are one person. Yeah, like you are one person. Like I was just talking about this today too. Like you're one person. I think like the cycle of what do you call, like the grant, fellowship, residency, industrial complex, because we have to add that all to everything. But yeah, no, that's what it is. Like it can trick you into believing that, like the way that they're worded, it can trick you into believing that like you are like saving the world or something, and it's like like you're doing work, but it's like it's not necessarily like that. You know, like you are like, I think now I'm very much like like I had to take a break from applying to things actually, because I was like, oh, like this is getting like, this is actually affecting my mental health. And it's so wild to be making work about like decolonization, and then I am like submitting myself into these systems to show my work. And so it's like, oh no, like what is going on? So I had to stop applying to things, and I would tell myself to like, calm down, like it's gonna be okay. You're gonna be able to make the work will get made. Also, like, also believe in yourself more, and don't take your value from these outside sources, especially the sources that you're critiquing in your work. Like, that is not where you should be getting your value from. Like, you should be working on that yourself, and also working on that through like community. So I think like when you're constantly applying to grants and fellowships and residencies, like it's really easy to like misplace your value and like give your power away to an institution to tell you that your work is worthy. And it's like, no, that's actually not the vibe at all. So that's what I would tell myself, yeah. Yep. Oh.
Go for it. What would you say is the biggest misunderstanding that people take from your, okay, got it?
Oh, yeah, no, like I think the biggest misunderstanding is that some people think that like, because I also work in layers, like I think a lot of my work is very layered, like, so some people will think like they'll look at it and they'll be like, oh, it's just about Black people dancing. And it's just like, no, it's not about Black people dancing. Like, yes, we move, we dance, but it's about all of the ways that we move through the world. And it's about what it means to be connected and embodied, and what it means to still be here. Like, that to me is just something that I think about sometimes, and I think about how my ancestors survived so that I can be here. I think about what it means to survive, to thrive, to live life, and that's what the movement library is about. I started with dance because at the time, like I thought, like, oh, this is like a good entry point, because I think people can connect to that. But I think people are like sometimes take it a little bit too far, and it's just like, no, like, it's like, yes, dancing is important, dancing is part of it, but it's not the entirety of why I am doing this work. Even in the books that I collected for the library, like I also have books on Black political movements, like different types of the different types of movements, like I'm not thinking about movement in any one way. Like, it's very broad to me. So, yeah. Yeah.
One last question, especially since there are a lot of like young artists in the room, what kind of advice would you give to someone who's interested in like collaboration? Because you do so much collaboration and to the community and engagement in your work.
Yeah, that's a great one. I think that, you know, for me, collaboration is relationship building, and yeah, take it slow. Like, you don't have to, like when you're collaborating with someone, try your best not to impose those systems of harm that you have to work in every day to be able to even get to the point where you can collaborate. What does that mean? So that means that, like, oh, we're not going to like work in a way that only focuses on the product. It focuses more on the process. Like for the example with Marguerite, like we didn't come into the collaboration thinking that we were going to make a 20-minute video. We came into the collaboration just wanting to work together. And then what came out of it was a 20-minute video. You know what I mean? And so what does it mean to sort of flip everything on its head, focus on process, focus on being together, and see where that work comes out, like see the work that comes out of that, and allowing yourself to like dive deep into that way. And so how do you find then, like we actually had a very like similar, I had a very similar experience with the residency that I did at Jacob's Pillow, where like I was able to invite 6 of my collaborators, and it was also very similar. They were like, oh, we don't really have like a set thing that you need to like perform at the end, but like show something. And so then from there we did like some journaling, we did some movement, we like just allowed the process to give us the work. We allowed the work to reveal itself, rather than, oh, we need to make this thing and it needs to be X, Y, and Z because we have this deadline like right now. So yeah, so I think that it's like taking a step back, and then also when you find people that you vibe with, when you find people that you really vibe with and you can collaborate with, hold on to them and thank them and hug them. Hug them. Hug your collaborators, because when you find people that you gel with, like it is really like, it's really hard to come together and like for folks to agree to like put all of that stuff behind. Like that's some hard work to do. So when you find people who are down for that ride, and also who are down for really being in community with you, like hold on to those people. Yay. Cool. Thanks.